Though most of the party has rallied behind Donald Trump after his indictment, some Republicans, including two of his rivals for the GOP nomination, have publicly broken ranks. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. So it shouldn't be that much of a surprise that the federal indictment of Donald Trump by special counsel Jack Smith and a grand jury of Trump's own peers out of Florida is basically going to dominate the political discourse for the foreseeable future. This is a seismic political and historic event when you talk about the indictment of a former president of the United States who was earlier this year indicted at the state level, now indicted at the federal level, and may yet be indicted again, considering there is another prong of the special counsel investigation concerning Trump's involvement with the January 6th insurrection, as well as charges coming out of Georgia in terms of Trump's perfect phone call in which he tried to press the Georgia Secretary of State to find 11,780 votes, one more vote than Biden had in 2020, in order to steal the election from Joe Biden. So, again, Donald Trump may become a living nexus of state and federal indictments as he's running for the presidency a second term in 2024. Again, a huge historic event. And unfortunately, because the Republican Party is no longer, it's not even pretending to be a loyal opposition party. It's a bad faith, disloyal opposition cult with no limiting principle. Most of Republican leadership have either stayed disturbingly, neglectfully quiet, or when they have spoken, they have publicly supported him and tried to suggest that the Department of Justice is being weaponized by President Biden, Attorney General Garland, Jack Smith, irrespective of the evidence. They haven't read the indictment, they're not interested in the indictment, or they have read the indictment, but they understand that it's in their best political interest to suggest that Trump is again the victim of a witch hunt. Now, a relatively few prominent Republicans, such as Attorney General Bill Barr, Trump's own former Attorney General, I might add, have publicly spoken against him. But Bill Barr isn't running for anything. Bill Barr is effectively retired. He's not a candidate for office. He doesn't hold an office. He's a twice, appointed former Attorney General. So to whatever extent that he can summon political courage, it makes sense, right? Because he's not running for anything. He's not beholden to the Republican base, which is firmly in Trump's pocket. But what about those who are still running for office? Trump's own competitors, as a matter of fact. Well, there are some who have found the courage, such as it is, to publicly criticize Trump in the aftermath of the indictment. And I want to start with Mike Pence, because I say courage, and I guess it does take courage a bit, but it's really profoundly pathetic that the state of politics is such that someone who is running for the presidency himself, which Mike Pence is, and somebody who claims to be a man of faith and man of principle, struggles so much to find his courage, his fortitude. And Pence, when the indictment was announced, Pence, he gave a CNN town hall in which he tepidly said, well, listen, nobody's above the law, but I really think it's a bad idea to indict former President Trump because it's so divisive, but nobody's above the law, but he shouldn't be indicted, but nobody's above the law. He was taking this mutually exclusive talking point. Well, now I guess he's read the 49-page indictment and he's found some fortitude, so I want to play this clip and then we'll unpack it.
The handling of classified materials is a very serious matter, not only from my years as vice president, but also my years on the International Relations Committee. And look, I had a chance to review the indictment over the weekend. And this indictment contains serious charges, and I cannot defend what is alleged. I will tell you, not only as a former vice president, but also my son's a Marine. My son-in-law is a Navy lieutenant. I mean, the very prospect that what is alleged here took place, creating an opportunity where highly sensitive classified material could have fallen into the wrong hands, even inadvertently, that jeopardizes our national security. It puts at risk the men and women of our armed forces. And as I said, I can't defend what is alleged, but the former president has a right to his day in court.
So that's as close to an outright condemnation as we've gotten from former Vice President Mike Pence, again, who he waffles. I don't find Mike Pence to be a particular man of integrity because, for, again, a man of faith, a man of principle, a man of civic duty, which he all professes to be, or he professes to all be. This man struggles entirely too much with basic duties, basic obligations. He struggled too much with the decision to not try to unilaterally overthrow the results of the 2020 election. Yes, he ultimately made the right decision, but to me, this is a person, again, who's like walking down the street and struggling with the decision to not kick a puppy, or to not kick a kitten, or to not steal candy from a baby. Yeah, I guess I give you some credit for making the right decision in the end, but the fact that you struggled with it at all is really an indictment of your character and suggests that you are, to some extent, a coward. So, again, I'm not inclined to grade Mike Pence on a curve here. I will also point out, let me go to another presidential rival of Donald Trump who also found the courage, I would say much more so than Mike Pence, to come out the gate swinging on Donald Trump, which is Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, who stands, I think, even less of a chance than Mike Pence in terms of securing the nomination. But let's hear what he has to say on the matter.
Ask you about the indictments that we've seen. Yesterday, former Attorney General Bill Barr called the indictment, quote, very damning, and he said if even half of it is true, then he's toast. You're a former U.S. attorney, is he right?
It is a very tight, very detailed, evidence-laden indictment, and the conduct in there is awful. I mean, put aside taking the documents in the first place, but then when you start getting asked, Anderson, in May of 21, nicely, with a letter from the archivist saying, could you please give them back? And you ignore it. Then they come with a grand jury subpoena. And then according to the indictment, you tell your lawyers, tell them we don't have anything, even though you have dozens and dozens of boxes of material. That's obstruction of justice if it's true. And so I think the former Attorney General is absolutely right.
So yeah, as far as the GOP field is concerned, these two are the only rivals to former President Donald Trump that I am aware of who have, belatedly, in the case of Mike Pence, come out and just flatly condemned the behavior that is alleged in the indictment. Now, Nikki Haley and others have kind of signaled like, well, I mean, but that they make more of a big deal about the alleged weaponization of the Justice Department. So these two, Mike Pence and Chris Christie, will not be rewarded by the Republican base for their honesty. Again, the Republican Party is effectively a cult. I think we've seen political commentators and we've seen documentaries by people who actually study cults professionally, psychologists and sociologists. They have come out and said that the Republican Party today, particularly that MAGA base, does indeed have the characteristics of a cult. It's arguably the biggest cult in the history of the United States. They will not reward honesty from Mike Pence and Chris Christie, irrespective of the fact that these two men previously supported for years Donald Trump, so they should have some degree of credibility. It's not like they've always been never Trumpers, right? And irrespective of the fact that both of them, particularly Mike Pence, worked closely with Donald Trump, so they have an insider view to Trump in the way that Trump's own followers don't. The vast majority of MAGA supporters have never met Donald Trump, let alone know him well, know him personally. These two men do know him well and do know him personally and have a relationship with him that spans years, if not decades. So from a position of credibility, from a position of intimate knowledge, they are vastly better informed and therefore in a better position to make informed opinions about Donald Trump. And they're coming out and condemning him. But that honesty will not be rewarded by the Republican Party because the Republican Party is a cult. So not that these two men stood a chance anyway, but and not that I'm particularly inclined to award them or applaud them or giving a standing ovation for their honesty here, because this is the bare minimum. It should be unremarkable that two people who are vying for the highest office in the country to become the most powerful men in the country, if not the world, they should have enough basic integrity. It should be a bare minimum for them to come out and say that, yeah, listen, in this detailed indictment from a highly effective special counsel and his team in which they present the evidence, yes, it's persuasive, and if the subject of the indictment, Donald Trump, is guilty of the allegations in the indictment, then that's awful and he should be punished accordingly. The fact that these two men are the only people in the GOP field who have found the basic decency and, again, the courage to just come out and flatly say that. Again, it's almost like a science teacher, applying for a job in an elementary school or a high school or whatever, and during the course of the interview, them saying, listen, yeah, I do believe that evolution is real. I do believe that the earth is round. I do believe that gravity exists. That shouldn't be like the deciding, like that shouldn't be particularly remarkable. The interviewer should be like, yeah, that's a given, right? But that's how low the Republican Party as a collective, as a political movement, and particularly among its own leadership, that's how low this party has sunk. And again, as a reminder, there is no analog to this on the Democratic side. The Democratic Party on its worst day in 2023 is simply better than the Republican Party on its best day in 2023. And that's simply a fact.